In 1861, a boiler explosion during a pumping operation killed one worker and left several others injured. Then, in August 1965, 4 men died in a single afternoon. Robert Restall, a former circus performer who had devoted years to excavating the island alongside his family, climbed down into a shaft and was overcome by hydrogen sulfide gas rising from the flooded tunnel system below. His son, Robert Jr., descended to help him and was overcome as well. 2 bystanders who came running did the same, one after another, each trying to save the person before them. Their names were Robert Restall, his son Robert Jr., Cyrus Hillman, and Carl Grazer. A 5th man, Andy Dement, was pulled out just in time, for people died trying to reach whatever lies at the bottom of that island. They did not die from carelessness. The flood tunnel system produces toxic gases in the confined spaces it creates, and each man who went down was trying to rescue the one who had just fallen. They are not footnotes. They are the stakes. The Lagina brothers know this history precisely. Marty Lagina, the businessman, the engineer, the more skeptical of the two, has said publicly that he approached Oak Island as a question of evidence. He needed proof to justify the investment. What has kept him coming back year after year is that the evidence keeps coming too. The lead cross is real. The carbon dates are real. The flood tunnels are real. The void that GPR is now mapping is real. Something happened here, and the people who came before the Laginas paid an irreversible price simply for the chance to ask the question. 2 centuries of theories. 3 theories have drawn serious researchers to Oak Island across 2 centuries. Captain William Kidd, hanged in London in 1701, was widely reported to have buried treasure somewhere in the Atlantic before his capture. Kidd was known to have actually concealed his wealth, gold, silver, and jewels whose value today would translate to tens of millions of dollars. He was active throughout the Atlantic world and had both the means and the motive to construct an elaborate hiding place. Court records from his trial reference buried treasure, and his associates reportedly confirmed its existence. The specific location was never extracted from him before his execution. The Knights Templar theory holds that the medieval military order, suppressed by the French crown in 1307, fled with a cache of sacred treasure, possibly relics from the Temple of Solomon, and that their descendants eventually reached the New World and buried it on Oak Island. Historians remain skeptical, but the geometry of certain structures on the island continues to attract researchers who consider the theory worth pursuing. A third theory centers on the British military. During the American Revolutionary War, British forces controlling portions of colonial America may have buried treasury funds on Oak Island before retreating northward. They were said to have concealed treasure somewhere around Nova Scotia on an island covered with oak trees, and that story spread rapidly. The timeline is consistent. The engineering capability fits. British military engineers had exactly the training needed to design and build the flood tunnel system, and the British had a well-documented interest in securely concealing assets during wartime retreats. 3 serious theories, all unproven, all still viable, all consistent with the carbon dating that places human activity on the island in the 1600s and 1700s. And all of them will be put to the test the moment a human being physically enters whatever space GPR has mapped beneath the money pit. What matters is not which theory is correct. What matters is that all 3 pirate gold, Templar relics, British colonial treasury rest on the same foundational assumption. Something valuable enough to justify extraordinary engineering was brought to this island and deliberately concealed by people who had the resources and the knowledge to do so effectively. The flood tunnel system is not a coincidence. It is not natural. It is the work of people who expected to be pursued and planned accordingly. 230 years later, those plans are still holding, but perhaps not for much longer. Rick and Marty Lagina, what they actually found. In 2006, 2 brothers from Michigan acquired a controlling interest in Oak Island Tours Incorporated. Rick Lagina had been captivated by the island since childhood. After reading a 1965 Reader's Digest article about the money pit that never left him, his brother Marty, who had built a successful natural gas company before selling it, brought the financial resources and an engineer's way of thinking. Together, they committed to doing what no one had done before: a systematic, technology-driven investigation of the entire island, not just the money pit. In 2014, the History Channel began documenting their efforts. The Curse of Oak Island is now in its 12th season. But none of what follows is about television. What matters is what the Lahaina team has physically pulled from the ground, had analyzed in independent laboratories, and documented in a way that holds up to scrutiny. A lead cross recovered from the island's swamp was analyzed by Dr. Krista Brusso and colleagues at St. Mary's University in Halifax using energy-dispersive X-ray fluorescence spectrometry. The results showed the lead composition is consistent with pre-industrial European lead, the kind smelted before the 17th century. The cross's style has been compared to artifacts associated with Christian missionaries and medieval European military orders active in the Atlantic world during the 1600s. That looks like a medieval cross. I mean, this is old. This is really... I can hear it in your voice, but how old exactly? This is not a television prop. It is a physical object analyzed by scientists using instruments, producing a result that places its origin in pre-industrial Europe. Handmade iron scissors recovered from depth are consistent in design with 17th-century European craftsmanship. Spanish copper coins have been recovered from the island at multiple locations. A fragment of material retrieved from deep within a drill core, its composition consistent with animal skin parchment, came up from a depth that, if its stratigraphic context is accurate, places it far below anything deposited in recent centuries. The Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution has assisted with underwater investigative work in the flooded shafts. Pieces of worked wood from within the Money Pit area have been carbon dated by independent laboratories. The results consistently place the material between the mid-1600s and the early 1800s. This is not interpretation. Carbon dating is a physical measurement with an established methodology and known error margins. That wood was placed underground by people who have been dead for centuries, people who lived during exactly the same era that the Captain Kidd and Knights Templar theories propose. And then there are the wooden structures at Smith's Cove, a complex of massive timber works exposed when the Lahaina team excavated the eastern shoreline of the island. I feel a kind of childlike excitement to see what we've only seen in photographs, to dig it up and witness with our own eyes what that strange and remarkable U-shaped structure actually is. Large wooden beams, precisely cut. A structure consistent with an ancient slipway, infrastructure that would have allowed boats to be hauled ashore and heavy materials transferred. A box drain system buried beneath the surface of the cove, engineered to direct water flow. A systematic construction project built at the water's edge, connecting directly to the flood tunnel system that runs inland toward the Money Pit. Someone built a dock here. Someone was moving large quantities of material in and out of this island, with clear purpose and skilled labor, a very long time ago. None of this proves buried treasure. All of it proves human activity, deliberate, large-scale, sophisticated human activity on this island centuries before its modern recorded history begins. And all of it was uncovered using the Lahaina team's suite of technologies. Metal detectors, core drilling rigs, underwater cameras in flooded shafts, geophysical survey instruments, and ground-penetrating radar. Of all these tools, GPR is the one that has advanced most dramatically over the past decade, and it is the one now producing readings in the Money Pit area that have the research team operating with an urgency they have not previously shown. What ground-penetrating radar shows and what it cannot. GPR works by sending pulses of electromagnetic energy into the ground. When those pulses encounter a boundary between materials, soil and rock, soil and air, soil and wood, soil and metal, some of the energy reflects back to a receiver at the surface. A computer then converts those reflections into a cross-sectional map of what lies underground. It does not produce photographs. It produces anomaly maps, images that reveal where something underground differs from what surrounds it. The critical insight for Oak Island. Human-engineered structures tend to exhibit geometric regularity in ways that natural geology does not. A tunnel reads differently from undisturbed bedrock. A chamber reads differently from a karst cavity. The more regular the geometry, the stronger the indication that what the instrument is detecting was not formed naturally. This technology has confirmed the flood tunnels, mapped the Smith's Cove timber complex, and is now generating readings in the Money Pit area that are driving the most aggressive phase of excavation the island has ever seen. What the radar is revealing right now. Begin with Smith's Cove, because this finding eliminated all remaining doubt about the scale of what was constructed on this island. GPR scanning of the eastern shore, combined with targeted excavation, has confirmed the existence of a complex drainage system connecting Smith's Cove to the Money Pit inland. The flood tunnels are real. They can be traced. They run from the ocean inlet through the bedrock toward the shaft. The Lagina team has physically exposed sections of this system during excavation. These are not theoretical channels. They are constructed passages cut into rock, angled to carry seawater inland by gravity alone. The GPR data helped chart their path before the excavation began, and was confirmed when the digging followed. The Smith's Cove timber structures themselves were partly located through geophysical survey before any excavation took place. What emerged from the ground was unexpected in its scale. A series of large wooden structures, including what researchers have identified as a possible slipway capable of hauling substantial watercraft, along with a buried box drain system engineered to manage water flow across the cove. A whole lot of somebody's thought this was very important. It's really the biggest mystery here. A massive undertaking with almost no leftover debris. Taken together, these structures tell the story of an operation that was not improvised. It was planned. It was well-resourced. The people who built the flood tunnels also constructed a harbor to support the work. In the Money Pit area, GPR has detected void spaces at depth. The geometry of these voids, their regularity and their apparently defined boundaries, is what has captured the research team's attention. Natural karst formations, which represent the geological alternative explanation for underground voids in Nova Scotia's limestone bedrock, tend to be irregular. Their edges are uneven in the way that rock dissolved over thousands of years naturally produces, gradual, asymmetrical, without consistent shape. The anomalies the instruments are detecting in the Money Pit area do not match that profile. Their geometry is more consistent with constructed chambers, regular boundaries, defined dimensions, the signature of something that was built rather than eroded. The Lagina team's geophysical consultants, specialists in subsurface imaging working with the most capable instruments currently available for this application, have described the Money Pit area readings as showing organized underground features that are inconsistent with natural geology. The research team has been careful not to overstate what the instruments reveal, but the implication of their ongoing excavation plan is explicit. There is a constructed underground space beneath the Money Pit that has never been physically reached, and GPR has now mapped its location with enough precision to guide a targeted approach. The central swamp of the island tells its own story, one that has only recently begun to be understood. For most of Oak Island's investigative history, the swamp was dismissed as a natural feature, an unremarkable wet area between the Money Pit zone and the island's shoreline. Geophysical surveys, including multiple GPR passes across the swamp surface and electromagnetic induction surveys, capable of detecting buried metallic and structural anomalies at depth, have completely changed that assessment. The swamp appears to be artificial. The evidence suggests it was deliberately flooded, possibly by the same people who built the Money Pit system, using the same water management engineering that created the flood tunnels. A naturally formed swamp and a deliberately constructed water feature leave different signatures in geophysical data, and the Oak Island swamp's readings are more consistent with the latter. Beneath the water and sediment, surveys have detected structural remnants, pieces of something that was once above the waterline and is now submerged under centuries of accumulated material. The picture GPR is assembling is of an island that was systematically engineered across multiple locations by people with substantial resources and a specific, sustained purpose. The Money Pit is not an isolated project. It is the core of a larger system. The flood tunnels connect to Smith's Cove. The dock infrastructure at the cove supported maritime access during construction. The swamp may have been part of the water management design. Everything the instruments detect points back to the same center, something at depth in the Money Pit area, protected by the most elaborate concealment system ever discovered in the Western Hemisphere. And at the heart of all of it, GPR is reading a void that does not look natural. Why no one has reached it yet? Here is the engineering reality that has stopped every searcher for 230 years. The flood tunnel system was built to be permanent. It was not a temporary precaution. It was the primary security mechanism protecting whatever lies underground, and it was designed by people who understood that future searchers would be both intelligent and highly motivated. I think we may have struck a collapsed tunnel, some kind of linear wooden feature that has been disturbed. When excavators dig deep enough to trigger the tunnels, seawater floods the shaft faster than any pump can handle. The tunnels have continued functioning without interruption since the day they were built, through more than 2 centuries of excavation attempts, because they are cut into bedrock and cannot be collapsed or rerouted simply by digging around them. Every attempt to bypass the system has made the problem worse. Previous searchers dug parallel shafts hoping to approach the target zone from the side and avoid triggering the tunnels. Most of those shafts eventually flooded too, or collapsed into the water-saturated ground surrounding the pit, or broke through into other failed shafts from earlier attempts. The Onslow Company's 1804 excavation left its mark. The Truro Company's 1849 excavation left its mark. The Oak Island Association, the Halifax Company, the Oak Island Treasure Company, each successive effort added more disruption to an already compromised site. By the time the Lagina brothers arrived, the Money Pit area was a century's worth of accumulated failed attempts layered on top of the original engineering. 230 years of failure have not been for lack of effort. They have been for lack of the right engineering approach and, until recently, for lack of the precise data needed to know exactly where to apply it. GPR changes this equation directly. The data accumulated across years of geophysical survey is now guiding the most precisely targeted excavation plan the island has ever seen. A purpose-built caisson, a steel-lined shaft driven into the ground with its own structural integrity, engineered to hold against the pressure of the flood tunnel system long enough for researchers to physically descend to the depth the instruments are targeting. This is the engineering solution that GPR made possible. Without the data, the caisson is a guess. With the data, it is a precision instrument aimed at a specific underground target. I think we've got what we came for. Billy, come on up. All right, Rick. We've got the data, the artifacts and the engineering together. The lead cross, the carbon-dated wood from the 1600s and 1700s, the handmade 17th century scissors, the Spanish coins, the parchment fragment from a drill core, the Smith's Cove timber complex, the slipway, the box drains, the dock infrastructure, the flood tunnels, physically confirmed through excavation. Lay all of this out together and a coherent picture takes shape, one far more compelling than any single finding suggests on its own, and one that 2 decades of serious investigation have supported with remarkable consistency. Whoever built the system at Oak Island had access to maritime engineering expertise. The slipway and dock infrastructure at Smith's Cove required specialized maritime knowledge to design and substantial resources to build. You do not construct a functioning harbor on a small Nova Scotia island by accident. They had access to materials in large quantities. The timber works required significant amounts of pre-cut lumber transported to the island and assembled with precision. They had the engineering sophistication to design a flood tunnel system that has defeated every excavation attempt for more than 2 centuries. A system that remains fully operational today, still filling any open shaft with seawater the moment a digger gets close to the target depth. And they left behind artifacts consistent with European origin and with a time period centered in the 17th century. Not one artifact, multiple artifacts, from multiple locations on the island, analyzed by multiple independent researchers using different scientific methods, all pointing to the same era. This combination, 17th century European artifacts, flood tunnel engineering of unprecedented complexity, and dock infrastructure capable of sustaining extended maritime operations, points toward an organized, well-resourced operation rather than a single individual burying personal wealth. Whatever happened on Oak Island was not the work of one person on one night. It was a project. It had a workforce. It had a purpose significant enough to justify extraordinary concealment measures that have held for more than 3 centuries. Dr. Brusso's spectrometric analysis of the lead cross at St. Mary's University is peer-reviewable work, produced using established instruments and documented methodology. The carbon dates from the worked wood are physical measurements with known error margins, not interpretations. The geophysical survey data was generated by credentialed specialists using industry-standard equipment. This is not a television show making claims. These are scientists producing results. Those results say that people were on this island in the 1600s and 1700s, building things of significant scale and sophistication, and that something they built or brought with them is still underground. GPR is now mapping precisely where. What happens next? The Lahaina team is now in the most advanced excavation phase the island has ever seen. The target is the void anomaly in the Money Pit area, the geometric underground formation whose dimensions and regularity the geophysicists say cannot be explained by natural karst formation. The approach is a purpose-built caisson, a steel-lined shaft with sealed structural integrity, driven into the ground with enough engineering precision to resist the flood tunnel system that has stopped every open excavation for 230 years. The caisson works because it fundamentally changes the engineering equation the flood tunnels were designed to exploit. An open shaft fills with water because there is nothing to stop the water. A sealed steel caisson gives the tunnels nowhere to go. Inside that controlled environment, the team descends toward the depth the instruments identified, toward the void. The radar found the specific target. The caisson is designed to answer the specific question. Is the void a natural karst cavity, or is it a constructed chamber? If natural, the search continues elsewhere. If constructed, if what greets the first researchers to reach that depth is work timber and evidence of deliberate placement, the same signature the artifacts have produced everywhere else on this island, then they will be standing inside whatever was built here, in a space sealed from the outside world since the 17th century, looking at whatever someone considered worth this extraordinary effort to conceal. That is not a metaphor. That is the literal situation the team is preparing to enter. 230 years of searching have produced one confirmed fact above all others. Something deliberate is buried on Oak Island. The people who built it were sophisticated. They were well-resourced. They were committed to concealment in a way that has defeated everyone who followed them, until now. Every pump that failed, every shaft that flooded, every man who climbed down and never came back up, all of it is the record of the flood tunnel system doing exactly what it was designed to do. It protected whatever lies down there for 2 centuries, against everyone. GPR has not defeated the flood tunnel system, but it has accomplished something that no one in the island's long history of failure ever managed. It has shown the team where to go and what to expect when they get there. The void is mapped. The geometry is documented. The engineering solution, the caisson, is designed around that specific data. This is not optimism dressed up as science. It is science directing engineering toward a documented target. The engineering required to reach it is finally catching up to the engineering that hit it. The Lahaina team has the data. They have the plan. The radar has shown them exactly where to dig. Now they dig. The answer is waiting. And this time, for the first time in the entire history of this search, the instruments tell them precisely what they are digging toward.